This is Nancy's story, and she said, "My name is Nancy, and I'm 27 now. I've got a good job, my own place, and enough money to live comfortably. But getting here, that's a story filled with more twists and turns than I ever imagined. It all started when I was 15. That's when Mom died. Dad tried to keep it together, but you could see he was falling apart. Then barely a year later, he dropped a bombshell on me. 'Nancy, I'd like you to meet Sarah,' he said one evening, standing in our kitchen with this woman who looked barely older than my cousin in college were getting her. Married Sarah was at least 15 years younger than Dad, and she came with a daughter of her own, Kayla, who was just 5 at the time. From day one, Sarah treated me like I was some kind of unwanted house guest. She'd walk right past me in the hallway without saying a word, or she'd suddenly start whispering to Dad whenever I entered a room. But Kayla, she was different at first. This tiny ball of energy would come bouncing into my room at all hours. 'Nancy, can we watch SpongeBob?' she'd ask, already climbing onto my bed with her stuffed penguin tucked under her arm. I love those moments. Having a little sister was something I'd always wanted. And for a while, it felt like maybe something good could come from this whole situation. But it didn't last. The change started slowly. First, Kayla stopped coming to my room after school. Then she'd make excuses when I asked if she wanted to watch TV together one day. I overheard Sarah talking to Kayla in the kitchen. 'Honey, you don't need to spend so much time with Nancy,' Sarah was saying in that sugary sweet voice of hers. 'She's not really your sister, she's just your father's other daughter.' That's when it all clicked into place, the way Sarah had been acting, the sudden distance from Kayla. It was all part of her plan. She didn't want Kayla seeing me as a sister, and she was succeeding after that. I stopped trying. What was the point? Every time Kayla looked through me at dinner or turned away when I passed her in the hall, it just hurt more. So I threw myself into my schoolwork instead. When I got accepted to college on a full scholarship, it felt like freedom. After college, my career took off like a rocket. Each year brought new opportunities, bigger projects, and better pay. I finally had the life I dreamed about, my own place. Nice clothes, fancy restaurants, weekend trips whenever I wanted. No more counting pennies or wearing hand-me-downs. Then came the phone call that changed everything. 'Nancy,' my father's voice on the other end of the line was hesitant, almost shy. 'How are you, sweetheart?' I nearly dropped my coffee mug. We hadn't really talked since I left. For college, sure, there'd been the occasional holiday card or brief happy birthday text, but that was it. I always suspected Sarah had something to do with the silence. She had this way of hovering whenever Dad tried to call me, always finding some reason he needed to hang up quickly. I've been thinking, he continued when I didn't respond. Maybe it's time we started fresh. Put the past behind us. Come over for dinner this SU. Sarah would love to see you too. Now I knew something was definitely up. Sarah would love to see me, but curiosity got the better of me. And that Sunday, I found myself pulling into their driveway. To my shock, Sarah greeted me at the door with a huge smile and even hugged me. 'Nancy, we've missed you so much.' I stood stiffly in her embrace, wondering if I'd stepped into the twilight zone. This was the same woman who once forgot to tell me about family dinner being moved to a different time, leaving me sitting alone at an empty table. The visits became a regular thing after that. Every Sunday I'd come over and we'd all sit in the living room making awkward small talk about the weather and local news. Then about a month in, the other shoe dropped. 'The thing is, Nancy,' Dad said one Sunday, staring into his coffee cup, 'we're having some financial difficulties.' Sarah jumped in, her voice. 'Honey sweet, the house needs so many repairs, and the bills just keep piling up. We hate to ask, but first it was just helping with the utility bills, then it was grocery money, then came the home repairs, a new water heater, fixing the Roof replacing the ancient furnace each time they called. The amounts got bigger, but I kept paying after all. This was family. Right, Kayla? Now a teenager, remained the one constant in this sea of change. While Dad and Sarah had done a complete 180, she stayed exactly the same, cold and distant. During my visits, she'd slouch in the corner of the living room, face buried in her phone, only looking up to mumble a half-hearted hey when forced to acknowledge my existence. Sometimes I'd catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't. Looking this strange expression on her face, not quite hatred, but something close to it. I told myself it was just the age difference after all. What 17-year-old wants to hang out with their 27-year-old stepsister? Maybe if we'd been closer in age, things would have been different. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The seeds Sarah had planted all those years ago had grown into thick, thorny walls between us. No amount of money or forced Sunday dinners was going to change. That the call came on a Tuesday evening, while I was sorting through my mail, Sarah's number flashing on my phone screen usually meant another bill needed paying, so I braced myself before answering. Nancy, we're planning something special. Sarah gushed, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. Kayla's turning 18 next month, and we want to make it absolutely perfect. The thing is, we're a bit short on funds right now, and we were hoping, of course they were. I rubbed my temples, fighting back. What kind of party are you thinking about? Nothing too extravagant, Sarah assured me quickly, just a lovely backyard celebration, but we want it to be special. You know, good food, nice decorations, all her friends. I found myself nodding despite my initial skepticism. Maybe this could be different. Maybe this was my chance to finally bridge the gap between Kayla and me. After all, 18 was a big deal. I still remembered my own 18th birthday party, though mine had been a much smaller affair at a local pizza place. What do you need help with specifically? I asked, already reaching for my laptop while Sarah hesitated. The biggest expense would be the food and drinks. We want to have enough for everyone. And you know how teenagers eat. I pulled up the website of a local catering company I'd used for work events. I could handle the catering I offered. They do great work, appetizers, main courses, drinks, and they make amazing cakes. I spent the next hour discussing menu options with them, trying to picture Kayla's face when she saw the spread. Would this finally be the thing that thawed the ice between us? I even found myself getting excited about the party planning. Then, a few days later, Dad called again. Nancy, honey, there's something else we need to discuss, he said, his voice serious. It's about future. I settled into my favorite armchair, sensing this wouldn't be a quick conversation. What about it? Well, She'll be graduating high school soon, and she wants to go to college. He paused. You know how important education is. And as her sister, I knew where this was heading before he even finished the sentence. But surprisingly, I didn't feel the usual irritation that came with their request for money. Instead, I found myself actually considering it. How much would tuition be? I asked. Well, we were looking at State University. Dad started listing figures, but my mind was already racing ahead. That night, after Dad's call, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, thinking it through. The State University was a decent school with reasonable tuition rates. I could afford it without too much strain on my finances. And maybe this could be the gesture that finally made Kayla see me as family. I made my decision. Right there, I'd announce it at her birthday party. My gift would be paying for her college education. I spent the next few days finalizing arrangements with the caterers, picking up the perfect cake design, and drafting what I'd say when I made my announcement. 2 days before the party, my phone rang while I was reviewing the final catering order. Kayla's name flashed on the screen, and my heart actually jumped. She'd never called me before for, "Hey, Kayla, I was just finalizing some party details." "Yeah, about that," she cut me off, her voice cool and businesslike. I'm going through the guest list right now. Mom and Dad invited way too many people, so I'm making some cuts. I'm cutting you from the list too. The words hit me like a slap in the face. I actually pulled the phone away and stared at it for a moment, sure I'd misheard. What, Kayla? I don't understand. I'm your sister. She laughed, and the sound was like ice crackling. No, you're not. That's kind of the point. This party is for blood relatives and close friends only. Neither. I never loved you like that. You were just there, some random girl living in our house. I gried the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. The room seemed to be spinning slightly by the way she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. If you already got me a gift or whatever, you can just have it sent over, by courier or something. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at nothing. My phone clutched in my trembling hand. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my father in tears. Dad, my voice cracked. Did you know about this? Did you know Kayla was uninviting me from her party? Oh, honey. He sighed like I was still a child complaining about a skin me. Don't take it so personally. You know how teenagers are. You're older and wiser than she is. Nancy family helps family. My voice rose. Kayla just explicitly said, I'm not family. Suddenly, Sarah's voice cut in sharp and clear. Now you listen here, Nancy. You're successful. You're rich. It's your duty to help us. We're your family. Whether Kayla wants you at her party or not, I opened my mouth to respond, but the line went dead. Sarah had hung up on me. I sat in my kitchen surrounded by party plans and catering menus, feeling like the biggest fool in the world, all this time of writing checks, of trying to buy my way into their hearts. And this was what they really thought of me, just an ATM with legs, a convenient source of cash, who didn't even deserve an invitation to the party she was funding. The laptop screen dimmed, then went dark, but I kept sitting there watching my reflection in the black glass behind me. I could see the corkboard where I pinned the acceptance letter from State University, the one I'd planned to show Kayla when I announced I'd pay for her education. I pulled up the catering company's number, then hesitated. The rational part of my brain reminded me that canceling now would be throwing money away. They'd already purchased all the food and started preparations. But then another thought struck me, and I found myself smiling for the first time in hours. Hello, this is Nancy Mitchell, I said. When they answered, I'm calling about the party order for this Saturday. I need to change the delivery address, and I'd like to donate the entire order to the Hope Harbor shelter downtown. There was a pause on the other end. The homeless shelter. Yes, I confirmed, pulling up their address on my phone. Just deliver everything as planned, just to the new address. The full order, all the appetizers, main courses, desserts, and especially that 3-tier cake. Don't change a thing. After hanging up, I felt lighter somehow. The knot of anxiety in my chest had loosened, replaced by a calm certainty. I didn't even feel guilty after all. Wasn't this exactly what Kayla wanted? No connection to her non-sister at her precious party. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. The morning of Kayla's birthday dawned bright and clear. I was enjoying my second cup of coffee when my phone exploded with Sarah's ringtone. Where is the catering? She shrieked without preamble. They were supposed to be here an hour ago, if this is your idea of a joke. Oh, the catering? I kept my voice light, casual. Don't bother waiting. Everything's been delivered to Hope Harbor Shelter. I'm sure they're enjoying it right now. The silence on the other end was deafening. You. What? Sarah's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. Well, since I'm not family enough to attend the party, I said, stirring my coffee. I figured I shouldn't impose my gift either. Kayla made it very clear. She only wants close relatives and friends involved, and as her father so wisely pointed out, I need to respect her wishes. You spiteful little. Sarah's voice rose to a screech. You've ruined everything. The guests will be here in 2 hours in the background." I could hear Kayla's voice rising in panic. "Mom, what's happening? Where's the food? Maybe you can order pizza?" I suggested cheerfully. That's what non-family members would do, right? Kayla's sobs were getting louder in the background, punctuated by what sounded like stomping feet and slamming doors. The mental image of her tantrum made me smile wider. "You've ruined her birthday," Sarah wailed, "her special day." "No, Sarah," I said calmly. "Kayla ruined it herself when she decided to teach her cash cow lesson. I just helped her learn one instead." I hung up while Sarah was still spluttering, set my phone to do not disturb, and took another sip of my coffee. It tasted better than usual, somehow sweeter. Somewhere across town, 200 people at Hope Harbor Shelter were about to enjoy the fanciest meal they'd had in years, complete with a gorgeous 3-tier birthday cake, and somewhere else my dear stepsister was learning that actions have consequences. The report started trickling in a few days after the party. My friend Lisa, whose cousin went to school with Kayla, was the first to call. "Oh my God, NC, it was a total dis-F," she said, trying to stifle her laughter. "You won't believe what happened when none of the catering showed up." Sarah ran to the supermar in a panic. She bought a bunch of sandwich stuff and started slapping them together in the kitchen, but she didn't get nearly enough half the guests. "Didn't even get food?" I took a sip of wine, picturing Sarah's perfectly manicured hands, frantically making sandwiches. "What about the cake? Even better." Lisa snorted. "She sent your dad to Danny's diner for whatever desserts they had left. He came back with a box of day-old donuts and some saddle-looking apple pies." People were standing around the backyard holding paper plates with half a sandwich and a stale donut, trying to figure out what was going on. And Kayla, complete meltdown. I mean nuclear. She was screaming, crying, throwing her gifts around the yard. Someone got hit in the shoulder with the Bath and Body Works gift. Set the look on your stepmother's face when those lotions went flying. Lisa dissolved into giggles. I was still smiling about it. When Dad called a few hours later, his voice had that forced, calm quality that meant he was trying very hard to sound reasonable. "Nancy, honey, we need to talk about what happened, what you did. It really hurt your sister, but I understand why you did it, and I forgive you." I almost laughed out loud. "You forgive me?" "Yes," he said magnanimously. "It's water under the bridge now, but we need to discuss something more important. Kayla's college education." And there it was, the real reason for this call. "Actually, Dad, there's nothing to discuss. I won't be paying for Kayla's education." There was a moment of stunned silence before he exploded. "What do you mean you won't pay? You promised you can't do this to your sister?" "My sister now," I did laugh, the same sister who explicitly told me, "I'm not family," the one who uninvited me from her party. Because I'm not a real relative, that was different. She was just being emotional family, helps family, Nancy. You know that's exactly my point, Dad. Kayla made it crystal clear that I'm not family. I'm just the walking ATM you all come to when you need money. Well, guess what? The ATM is closed. You're being ridiculous. He shouted after everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me. I cut in my voice sharp. What exactly have you done, except take my money and treat me like an outsider? No, Dad, I'm done. No more checks. No more bills, no more repairs, and definitely no college tuition. You and Sarah can figure out how to pay for Kayla's education yourselves. Goodbye, Dad. The expensive frame containing my planned college fund announcement for Kayla still sat on my desk. I picked it up, looked at it one last time, then dropped it in the trash. The campaign started about 3 days after my conversation with Dad. First came the calls from Aunt Rachel, then Uncle Mike, followed by cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and voicemails, all saying variations of the same thing. Nancy, you can't do this to your sister. Family has to stick together. Think about Kayla's future. Apparently, Dad and Sarah had been busy spreading their version of events to anyone who would listen. Poor Kayla denied an education by her cruel stepsister, who refused to share her wealth. They left out the part about uninviting me from the party, or declaring I wasn't family. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't recognize when family members did get through. I'd simply hang up as soon as they mentioned Kayla or college. After a few days, I just turned my phone off completely, but they weren't done yet. One morning, I opened my apartment door to find Sarah and Kayla standing there. Sarah had her finger poised over the doorbell, ready to keep pressing it until I answered. I shut the door in their faces. They came back the next day and the next, sometimes together, sometimes separately. I started using the back entrance to my building and asked the doorman not to let them up. Then, about a week after everything went down, a text from Kayla popped up on my phone. Nancy, we need to talk. I know I overreacted about the party. It was stupid to take everything so seriously. The guest list thing was just a joke. Can't we just forget about it and move on, please? I stared at the message for a long time, letting out a short laugh. Now it was a joke, now that she'd realized there were consequences to her actions. Suddenly everything was just a silly misunderstanding. You're right, I texted back it was a joke, and I thought it was hilarious, especially the part where I sent all the food to the homeless shelter. Wasn't that funny? I really appreciated your sense of humor, so I decided to match it with my own. She didn't reply for several minutes. When she did, her message was just one word, please. That's when it hit me. Dad and Sarah hadn't told her. They hadn't mentioned that I'd paid for the catering or that I'd been planning to cover her college tuition. I sat back in my chair thinking about how differently things might have played out if Kayla had known. She probably would have been sweet as sugar, playing the role of loving sister perfectly. There would have been hugs and thank yous and promises of eternal gratitude. The party would have gone perfectly. I would have made my big announcement about college, and everything would have seemed wonderful on the surface. But it would have all been fake, just another performance in the ongoing show of, let's pretend we're a happy family. As long as Nancy keeps writing checks in a weird way, I owed Kayla a thank you. Her moment of honest cruelty had ripped away the facade I'd been desperately trying to maintain for years. She'd shown me exactly what I was to them. Not family, not even a friend, just a convenient source of cash. I blocked her number without replying again. These days, my bank account is healthier than ever, and my stress levels are significantly lower. No more unexpected calls about broken appliances or overdue bills. No more guilty manipulation about family obligations. No more pretending 6 months after the party. Fiasco, I heard the latest drama unfolding at my old house through Lisa, who still kept in touch with the neighbors. It turned out that Kayla confronted our parents about using their savings for her education. She was confident they had money set aside. After all, they'd been talking about her college plans for years. That's when they had to confess the truth. They'd spent the money on their new luxury SUV 6 months ago. Their justification: they'd been counting on me to pay for Kayla's education, so they figured they could use their savings for themselves. The fallout was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd been raised to believe the world revolved around her. According to the neighbors, Kayla's reaction could be heard from 3 houses down. First came the demands for them to take out loans to cover her tuition. When they admitted their credit wasn't good enough, she insisted they sell the car. Sarah, of course, refused, claiming she needed the luxury vehicle for her real estate business. Now Kayla's staging what she calls a protest, refusing to get a job or move out until they figure out how to pay for her college. She spends her days up in her room, emerging only to start another argument about how they've ruined her future. The neighbors say the fighting never seems to stop, with Caleb bringing up the car at every opportunity and her parents becoming increasingly desperate to justify their choice. The irony isn't lost on me after years of Sarah and Dad hitting me up for emergency expenses and household repairs. It turns out they'd been saving up for a luxury purchase all along. And now Sarah's apparently complaining to anyone who listened about Kayla's ingratitude, seemingly oblivious to the parallel with how they treated me all these years. Those who know the situation better than I do give it another month before my parents cave and sell the car. Kayla learned manipulation from the best. After all, she watched her mother wear me down for years with guilt trips and emotional manipulation. Now she's simply applying those same tactics to her parents. I have. No doubt she'll eventually succeed. The car will be sold. She'll get her tuition money and the cycle of manipulation will continue. She's her mother's daughter through and through. Why work for something when you can pressure others into giving it to you? But it's not my problem anymore. Let them deal with the monster they created. My own life has found a peaceful rhythm without them in it. My savings account grows steadily now that it's not being drained by their constant demands. I've started taking those art classes I'd always wanted to try, and I'm planning my first real vacation in years. No more setting aside my own dreams to fund theirs.